You know what this story showed the world? That honest work and faith can transform lives, he told Jessica. Jessica smiled, emotional, but despite the sudden exposure, she remained the same humble and hard-working person. A few days later, as Jessica resumed her routine at the restaurant, she received an unexpected call. "Hello, Jessica. This is Marcus from Caitlin Clark's agency. She asked us to get in touch with you. She was very moved by your story and wants to help you even more." Jessica was left speechless as she listened to how Clark had decided to cover all of Liam's future medical expenses and offer a small fund to ensure she had more financial stability. That same weekend, Clark shared a post on her social media about her experience at the restaurant. "I met an incredible person named Jessica who served me with so much care without knowing who I was, and that inspired me. May we all remember to help our neighbors, no matter the size of the help. Every gesture counts." The post went viral, drawing more attention to Jessica's story. Many people mobilized, offering support and even donations so that she and Liam could have a more peaceful life, a future full of hope. Back at the hospital, Jessica reflected on everything that had happened, sitting next to Liam's bed, who was now playing and talking animatedly. She felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. "Mom, are you crying again?" asked Liam, curious. Jessica laughed as she wiped away her tears. "Yes, my love, but now they're tears of happiness." For Jessica, Clark's gesture was much more than financial help. It was a demonstration that kindness still existed in the world, and that sometimes miracles arrive when we least expect them. That night, as she put Liam to bed, Jessica took out the note she still kept in her purse. "Thank you for the wonderful service. God bless you and your family." Jessica knew that these words would always be a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light can come from the most unexpected places. I never asked for a miracle that day. I was just doing my job the best I could, like I always do, but sometimes life surprises you. Sometimes the person who changes everything is sitting right there at your table. Caitlin Clark didn't just leave a tip that day, she left me with hope, and hope changes everything. And you? If you had the opportunity to transform someone's life, would you do it? Small gestures can make a big difference. Share this story and remember that sometimes the simplest things can be the most extraordinary. After finishing dessert, Clark asked for the check. Jessica quickly brought the receipt and handed it to her with a smile. "Thanks for taking such good care of us, Jessica. The service was incredible," Clark said, looking her in the eyes sincerely. She felt a little embarrassed, but returned to the counter without giving it much importance. She was used to receiving compliments for her service, although she rarely felt valued enough in her routine. Minutes later, when Clark and her friends got up to leave, Jessica noticed she had left the payment and a small note on the table. Curious, she went over and picked up the paper. The message read, "Thank you for the wonderful service. God bless you and your family." Along with the note was the payment for the meal, but when she counted the amount, Jessica froze. Her eyes widened as she realized that Clark had left an unbelievably generous tip, something out of the ordinary. She needed a few seconds to process what was happening. The amount of the tip was enough to cover almost all of Liam's surgery. This simple gesture of generosity meant the difference between life and death for her son. Jessica couldn't hold back her tears. Her hands trembled as she held the note to her chest, sobbing with emotion. An unexpected miracle. The commotion attracted the attention of other employees and even some customers who were still in the restaurant. "Jessica, what happened?" asked Mr. Johnson, concerned. She paid the bill, but the tip," she tried to explain, but the words seemed to get caught in her throat. Jessica, still emotional, ran to the door. There she saw Clark getting into her car and shouted, "Caitlin, thank you. You saved my son." Clark looked back, smiled, and made a simple peace and love gesture with her hand before getting into the vehicle and disappearing down the street. Jessica returned to the restaurant, still in tears, but with her heart full of gratitude. A simple lunch had transformed her life. Jessica's emotions seemed to infect the entire restaurant. Customers and co-workers who witnessed the scene couldn't stop commenting on Clark's generous gesture. Some applauded, while others came to console Jessica, who was still wiping her tears with her apron. "This was a miracle," Jessica said. Mr. Johnson put his hand on her shoulder. "You deserve every penny of this tip." Despite the celebratory atmosphere, not everyone was in high spirits. Emily, another employee of the restaurant, observed the scene from a distance with an expression of displeasure. She didn't understand why Clark had chosen Jessica to receive such generosity. "Seriously, she didn't even notice me, but she left this fortune for Jessica just because she did the bare minimum," Emily muttered to one of her colleagues. Jessica, unaware of the criticism, asked Mr. Johnson for permission to leave early and make arrangements at the hospital. With the money in hand, she knew she could finally pay for Liam's surgery. However, before she could leave, Emily approached with a tone of voice that mixed irritation and sarcasm. "Congratulations, Jessica. Looks like good service now gets you lottery prizes. Maybe next time someone will give me a house." The comment was shocking to Jessica. She looked at Emily, trying to process the unexpected hostility. "Emily, this wasn't just about the service. I don't even know how to explain it, but it was an act of kindness. And to be honest, this money is for my son's surgery." "Remember, he's in the hospital," Jessica responded, keeping her calm. "All right, always the struggling mother," Emily snapped. "It's easy to play the victim and win everyone's pity," replied Emily, crossing her arms. The restaurant staff began to notice the argument. Mr. Johnson intervened, calling Emily to speak privately, but she refused and insisted on continuing. "I just think it's not fair. I work just as hard as you, Jessica, and I've never had any luck in life. It seems only those with a personal drama get rewarded." Jessica took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure despite the frustration. "Emily, I'm really sorry you feel that way. I never asked anything from anyone, but if you were in my place, you'd be grateful too. It wasn't luck. It was a miracle." Jessica's words touched some people who were observing the argument. One of the customers who had witnessed the scene from the beginning stood up and interrupted. "Hey, don't turn this into something negative. Clark did that because she saw something special in Jessica's service. It was a good deed, and we could all learn from it." The tense atmosphere began to dissipate, and Emily, realizing the looks around her, backed down. "All right, I hope this helps your son," she said, walking away to the back of the restaurant. Jessica looked at Mr. Johnson, who smiled at her encouragingly. "Go, Jessica. Your son needs you now." With that, Jessica left the restaurant and headed to the hospital with the feeling that this money would not only change her life, but would also prove who she really was, a woman of faith, courage, and gratitude. A new hope. Jessica arrived at the hospital with her heart racing. The money in her bag seemed to weigh more than normal, but this time it was a weight that brought hope. She entered the reception almost running and went directly to the service desk. "Good afternoon. I'm here to pay for my son Liam Bennett's surgery costs," she said with determination. The receptionist, surprised, quickly typed in the system and confirmed the amounts. "Would you like to pay in cash?" asked the woman, looking at her with curiosity. "Yes, in cash," replied Jessica, opening her bag and handing over the money. The feeling of relief was instantaneous, as if a ton had been lifted from her shoulders. While waiting for the receipt, Jessica looked down the hallway that led to Liam's room. He had been hospitalized for weeks, and each day without surgery was a fight against time. Now, finally, she could ensure he would receive the treatment he needed. A few minutes later, Liam's doctor, Dr. Adams, appeared at reception. He was an experienced man known for his seriousness, but at that moment, his face was lit up with a welcoming smile. "Jessica, we've just been notified that the costs have been paid. This is wonderful. We're going to arrange the surgery as quickly as possible," he said. Tears returned to Jessica's eyes. She thanked the doctor repeatedly, trying to express her gratitude between sobs of emotion. "You saved my son's life. Thank you for not giving up on us." Dr. Adams just smiled and put his hand on her shoulder. "You're an amazing mother, Jessica, and now Liam will have the chance to grow up strong and healthy." Liam's surgery and a new beginning. The news that the surgery would be scheduled for the next day was an absolute relief. Jessica ran to Liam's room, where she found him playing with a toy car that one of the nurses had given him. "Mom!" shouted Liam upon seeing her, with a smile that lit up the room. Jessica knelt beside the bed and hugged him tightly, feeling the purity of the love between mother and son. "My love, everything's going to be all right. Now you're going to have your surgery, and soon we'll be home together." Liam, still not fully understanding what that meant, just smiled and said, "I trust you, Mom." That night, Jessica stayed at the hospital with Liam, praying silently and reflecting on everything that had happened. She remembered Clark and the simple but transformative gesture she had made. A casual lunch had completely changed the course of her life. The next morning, the medical team prepared Liam for surgery. Jessica accompanied the entire process up to the door of the operating room, where she leaned down, gave her son a kiss on the forehead, and whispered words of encouragement. "Mom is here, and God is too. You're very strong, my angel." The following hours were the longest of Jessica's life. Sitting in the waiting room, she clutched the note Clark had left her, using it as an anchor of faith. Her other parents looked at her, noticing her mixture of nervousness and hope. Finally, Dr. Adams appeared again. This time, his smile was bigger, almost radiant. "Jessica, the surgery was a success. Liam is recovering well." Jessica fell to her knees, crying with relief and gratitude. "Thank you, God. Thank you, doctor. And thank you, Caitlin." In the days following the surgery, Liam began to recover quickly. Each smile, each gesture, and each word he said filled Jessica's heart with joy. Seeing her son healthy again was the greatest reward she could ever imagine. Meanwhile, Bayside Beastro was booming. Clark's generous gesture had gone viral on social media after some customers shared videos and photos of the moment. Many people were moved by Jessica's story and her dedication to her son. Mr. Johnson, the manager, was proud of her. "I never thought a normal Friday shift would change my entire life. I was just doing my job, serving tables like I always do." Then she walked in, Caitlin Clark, but that's not the miracle. The miracle was what happened when she left. Jessica was a 28-year-old waitress working at Bayside Beastro, a small but welcoming restaurant located in a busy Oakland neighborhood. The place was famous for attracting everyone from local workers to curious tourists looking for authentic California cuisine. Jessica dedicated herself to her work with a smile always on her face. Although inside, her life was far from easy. As a single mother, Jessica faced a tremendous challenge. Her 6-year-old son Liam was hospitalized due to a congenital heart condition that required urgent and very expensive surgery. Jessica's salary barely covered daily expenses, and the hospital bills only continued to grow. Despite everything, she kept her faith and worked hard, hoping for some kind of miracle. The routine at the restaurant started early. Jessica arranged the tables, prepared the atmosphere for customers, and always maintained a welcoming tone with everyone who entered. She was known for her friendliness among regular customers, although the weight of her situation often showed in moments of distraction. That Friday morning, the day began like any other. The restaurant was lively with the usual flow of customers. Jessica served dishes, quickly took orders, and exchanged pleasantries with those she served. The manager, Mr. Johnson, frequently praised her for her dedication, but also knew the difficulty she faced. When the clock struck 1 p.m., a murmur began to spread through the dining room. Some customers stood up and whispered among themselves. Jessica looked toward the door to see the cause of the commotion, and to her surprise, Caitlin Clark, the famous basketball player for the Iowa Hawkeyes, entered the restaurant accompanied by some friends. The entire restaurant seemed to pause for a moment. Clark was a widely admired figure, and seeing a celebrity of such caliber in such a simple place was quite unusual. Jessica, however, maintained her composure. She took her notepad and walked to the players' table with the same friendly smile she always offered to any customer. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Bayside Beastro. My name is Jessica, and I'll be taking care of you today. May I start you off with something to drink?" Jessica smiled. Clark smiled back, polite and relaxed, and placed the order for herself and her friends. The interaction was brief, but enough for Jessica to realize how down-to-earth she seemed, unlike the grandiose image often portrayed in the media. The service continued normally, and Jessica made sure to attend to Clark's table with the same care and attention she dedicated to everyone else. However, the players' presence brought an atmosphere of excitement to the restaurant, with customers taking photos from a distance and whispering among themselves. Jessica couldn't imagine that this seemingly ordinary day would mark such a big turning point in her life, a gesture that would change everything. The restaurant was at its peak during that lunch hour. Clark and her friends chatted animatedly while Jessica remained attentive, ensuring nothing was lacking at their table. She was happy to be able to serve the player professionally, despite the pressure of curious glances and constant requests from other customers for selfies. At one point, Clark raised her hand, calling Jessica over. She quickly approached. "Is everything all right?" she asked with a smile, reflexively holding her notepad. "Everything's excellent, thank you," Clark replied, looking at her friends before turning her attention back to her. "We want to order dessert. Do you have any recommendations?" Jessica suggested the house's homemade desserts, highlighting the seasonal berry cobbler, which was the specialty of the house. Clark laughed and accepted the suggestion, ordering 4 portions for the table. As she returned to the counter to prepare the order, Jessica couldn't help but think how surreal that day was. Despite her life being filled with difficulties, serving Caitlin Clark was a moment that would surely remain etched in her memory.